Hey, 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 welcome to the Teacher Goals podcast. I am your host, Erica Terry from Healthy Wealthy Educators. Super excited about tonight's episode number 4. We have Dr. Sheldon Eakins, and I will be bringing him up pretty soon. He is from the Leading Equity Center. You may have heard his voice. You may be familiar with his voice from Leading Equity Podcast, but he is going to be here to drop some knowledge on us tonight. If you have rocked with us over the last 4 weeks, then you already know my first question. I want to know who you are. Who do we have with us tonight, and what do you do? What is your role in education? And so, as I'm waiting to hear from you guys and to find out who we have with us, I'm just going to go over some of the rules that we have for tonight. If this is your first time, we have our interview first. And so, as I am interviewing Dr. Eakins tonight, feel free to drop comments and questions in the comments, because as soon as our interview is over, then we will go right into a live Q&A with him, where he will be answering your specific questions. And tonight we're going to be talking about developing an equity mindset. And so, any questions you have about equity, he already told me, like, as long as we're talking about equity, he's cool. So that means I want you all asking some questions tonight. And so right after the interview, I will be checking the questions and asking what you have. And so it's usually a little bit of a delay. But I am still waiting. So I'm not seeing the comments come through yet. And so I am still waiting to see who we have here with us tonight. And I want to know what your role is in education. And while I'm waiting for that to come up, I have an exciting announcement to share. We are officially on all of the major podcast platforms now. So, what I need for you all to do tonight, tomorrow, whenever you get that phone or device back in your hand, is go to your favorite podcast platform, whether it is Apple, Spotify, Google, and I need you to subscribe, listen, review. We want to get our podcast to as many educators as possible. So please, please, please subscribe and review the Teacher Goals podcast. And then last but certainly not least, while I am waiting, as you guys know, we have our Teacher Goals conference coming up. It is like so close now. We are about a month away from the Teacher Goals virtual conference, March 11th and 12th. Dr. Eakins is going to be one of our keynote speakers. So if you love him tonight, you will definitely love him at the conference. And the best news is that it is absolutely free to attend the entire 2-day event. We have keynote speakers, over 20 sessions, 2 comedy shows, and you can get it all free when you register for your ticket at teachergoals.com/conference. So you want to make sure you go ahead and get that ticket tonight. And so with that being said, we have Chris with us from Canada. So you teach English in elementary school. We are very excited that you are here. We have Milton with us tonight, who is in Mexico teaching English. So super excited that you are here. I'm sure the weather there is so much better than what we are experiencing today. It's pretty cold. So we are super excited to have you here from Mexico. And once again, that link is in the comments. So if you have not registered just yet, go ahead and do that at teachergoals.com conference. Cleora says, hello again. Welcome back. We are glad that you are hanging out with us on Thursday nights. And so she is a preschool teacher from Michigan. Thank you for joining us. We have Byron, who teaches in South Korea. Super excited that you are here with us. Jen is teaching some Minecraft coding in Las Vegas and online. That sounds really cool. So thank you for joining us. We have Dominique from Belize checking in. So hello. So excited that you're here. And then last but certainly not least, tonight we have Janine that teaches fourth grade in New Jersey. And she says she just loves watching us, and we love having you here in the Teacher Goals community. So thank you for joining us. And I said last but not least, but then Chris popped up and said, she's from Mexico too. So, of course, I have to share that because that's some exciting news. And Emily, I feel your pain. I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. My mom is still there. She has been telling me about the snow and weather that you all have been getting. And so I just want to thank you for joining us in the midst of all of that. Emily is a middle school teacher from Ohio. So welcome, everyone. As I told you, I am super excited about our guest that we have with us today. Dr. Sheldon Eakins is from the Leading Equity Center. He is going to be one of our keynote on Saturday, March 12th. And so we're super excited about that. And I am going to go ahead and bring him on up so that we can get this party started. Don't forget that he will be answering your questions at the end. So make sure that you are adding them to the comments so that I can get them up and ask them. So let's get started. Dr. Sheldon Eakins, I'm bringing him up right now. Hello, hello. How are you?
What's up? I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
I am excited as well, and we are so happy to have you with us. And so we are going to go ahead and just jump right into it because I have so many questions for you, and I'm sure the members of the Teacher Goals community has questions for you as well. And so the first question is always the same. We want to know who you are. Tell us about your story. Who are you? What do you do?
Who am I? That's such. Every time when folks read my bio or they ask that typical question, who are you? It is hard to how do I narrow that down in a minute or so? I'm a father. I'm an educator. I'm a lifelong, and I know it's cliche. I'm a lifelong learner, one of those type of dudes. Originally, I'm from Houston, Texas. Currently, I live in Idaho, and so I do want to recognize I am on the lands on the Shoshone and Bannock tribes. I'm representing the 0.8% of Black people in the state. I don't know if it's still 0.8 at this point because my parents moved away, so it might be 0.6 at this point. But there's not a lot of Black folks out here. But I love what I do. I started off as a teacher in a classroom. I spent 7 years as a history teacher, primarily middle school and high school. Spent some time as a school principal. Then I got my doctorate, moved to Idaho, and I was director of special education for a few years. And I started a show called Leading Equity. I started podcasting because, man, I'll be honest with you, Erica. Some of the things I experienced here, I just didn't have words for. I didn't have a response for it. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know what it was. And I wanted to learn I could be better as an individual and as an educator and support my students. So I started the podcast about 3.5 years ago, and that branched off into the Leading Equity Center. And currently that's what I do full time. So I'm a consultant. I'm a podcaster. I am also someone who enjoys engaging in conversation. So it's always great to be on the other side of the microphone because I'm so used to interviewing people. Like I got my notepad out here because I'm so used to doing this way. But it's great to kind of be able to relax and be the person that's getting asked a question. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, yes, and we are just happy to have you. And so let me tell you about me. I love to get all the tea, and I just heard you say that you were having these experiences, and all of us in education, we have these teacher problems, right? These experiences that we have, we may not have the words for them, but you were able to overcome that and turn it now into like your entire mission, your purpose, everything that you are doing was rooted and grounded in that experience, which was probably very uncomfortable for you. So, kind of just tell us about it. Like, what was going on? What challenges were you facing? And then what made you say, you know what? I am going to turn this negative into a positive?
So here, I think the pivotal moment for me was when I had a student. So I was working in higher ed at first. So I moved to Idaho I got a job at the local university here, and I was working for a program called Trio. And Trio, basically, for those who aren't familiar, is a federally funded program that supports students that are interested, maybe, or they would like to pursue a college degree, and they would be the first ones in their family to do so,
Mhm.
or they're maybe coming from a limited income background. So a lot of the kids that, the majority of the students that we worked with were, this would be their first shot. Their parents or guardians, things like that, they just hadn't had that college experience. And so what we wanted to do was really support them. And I think one of the moments for me was when I had a student come up to me, because I would work with some of the high school kids, and they would just share some of their stories about some of the experiences that they had. Maybe, it was right around when, our former president was making some comments. This is before he became the president, and he was talking about the wall and building the wall and all these things, and the students were coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Sheldon, all the kids around here, they're asking us when are we going back to Mexico? When are we getting our ticket? Why haven't we booked our ticket yet?" Like, these are experiences that they had. I didn't know what that was called. I didn't know how to tell, like, how
Mhm.
to help them. Like, I was trying to be there to support them, like from the emotional side. However, as far as like helping them have some language, how to respond to those type of comments that are being made, because they were happening a lot. And you
Mhm.
got to keep in mind the impact that it has on a student's not just their emotional side, but just all their academic ability, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm constantly being teased, I'm being bullied, and there's some really racial terms and words being thrown at me, and then I'm supposed to do well on my test or well on my quiz or turn in my homework and perform at my best when I'm distracted. And
Mhm.
so that was kind of like, man, I how can I talked to the kid, but it was like, this is not the only time that this has happened. I've had other experience. I've personally had all these experiences where folks were saying things to me. I walk around town sometimes and everybody just assumes that I must be a football player at the team or I'm a coach or something like that. I didn't know those were microaggressions or any of that kind of stuff. I had no clue. And so that's what I was like, okay, I want to know what's happening, how I can be better. So I started the podcast because I was like, I want to create content, because it's one thing for me to work on myself and one thing for
Mhm.
me to work on supporting students, and I'm in my bubble, but guess what? Kids don't just see one person every day. Like, they see multiple teachers, they see multiple people. So how do I share this with everyone and provide some sort of an audience that, look, here's what I learned. I'm literally talking to somebody, and these I'm asking them questions and they're giving me answers. So I would research publications, I would go to journals, I would find dissertations, I would find books on various topics that I just wanted to know how to be better. Selfishly, I was doing, like, finding people so I could answer my own questions. And then I didn't expect anybody to listen to the show. Again, I wanted to put it out there so that it was available. And the next thing I know, people started reaching out and say, "Hey, I listened to your show. I have questions. Hey, what are your thoughts on this, or what are your thoughts on that? Could you come do a presentation? Can you do some training with our students or with our staff?" And it just kind of grew from there. And here we are. But again, I honestly, I wasn't trying to start a business. I wasn't trying to make any money. I wasn't trying to do any of those things. I was literally just trying to learn how I could be better to help other people out and share it with everyone. And here we are.
Here we are about to dive into how we all can be better, right? How can we support our students who are struggling with these issues that you described? So let's jump into it by starting the discussion with uh, around like an equity mindset. What does that really mean? Like, we hear this word equity thrown around, but when we talk about having this equity mindset, like, what does it mean?
Can I define equity first?
Please.
Listen, and the reason why I'm starting my response with that, because I've heard like literally like a million different definitions of what equity is. And I think a lot of the issues now where we have a lot of pushback with terms such as equity and other terms, it causes, I say, I think it takes away from the bottom line. Is we want our kids to be successful in school, and not just in school, but we want them to be prepared to move on after they get done with high school, whatever that plan might be. And what we have to understand is that every single student in our schools, in our classrooms, in our hallways, they don't learn all the same. They might need something different. Some people are more auditory, some people more visual. There are different needs. If we're That's part of being human, as part of being a unique human. We're not all twins, triplets, or whatever, right? So we all have our individual needs. And so when I try to explain to people like what is equity, I put this example out. I say, you know what? If I walked into your classroom and I said, you know what, I have a box full of tennis shoes, and I'm going to give everybody a pair of tennis shoes. That's equality, right? All your students get a pair of tennis shoes. That's equality. Everybody gets the same thing. However, if that pair of tennis shoes is a size 3, and maybe it's not really a tennis shoe, it's more of a high heel shoe or something that not everybody in the classroom is going to be able to fit that or want to fit those type of shoes. That is where we have to find the difference between what equality is and what equity is, right? Equity is not taking something away from someone and giving it to someone else. It's just, bottom line, making sure that a student's individual needs are being met. You know what? This child might need a little bit extra time on their tests, or this child might need some help with taking their notes. This child here, they might need, you know what? They might need honors class. They might need, there's different things, and especially coming from working in special education, I've seen like kids, they can thrive. They have so many great abilities. Sometimes they just need an extra boost to get them to where they need to be. I don't see anything wrong with that. If it was my own child, and I have 2 kids, but if it's my own child and my own child had a special need, or they need a little extra time, or need less time, whatever it is, I want to make sure that they're getting that. And I think with everything going on, there's such a misunderstanding or a misconcept of what equity is, and it's become this boogeyman. Critical race theory has become this boogeyman, and it's just a lack of understanding. And unfortunately, a lot of the driving motivators against and pushing back and all these different challenges that we have are people that aren't even in education. And it's sad that it's high, who's impacted the most is our students are the ones that are going to be impacted the most in these type of situations.
Love it. And I love how you like, to me, the way you just presented it, the example that you shared really simplifies it to be meeting the needs of individual students. It has nothing to do with race or all of these things that we're hearing. And I love even that you equated it to students with disabilities, right? We differentiate instruction and do what we have to do to ensure that individual students' needs are met. So I absolutely love that, which brings me to, let's take it to the classroom. So as an educator, as a teacher, I understand, like, we come into education to make sure all of our students can achieve success, social, academic. So how can I do this with an equity lens, with an equity mindset? Like, what are some specific strategies that I can implement as a teacher?
Starts with relationships. People do not understand. There's some folks, I'm not going to just say people, but some folks do not understand the power of relationships. And the reason why I start there is because if you do not have a good relationship with your students, and you don't know them individually, and you don't know what they're into, what they like, then how can you know what they need when it comes to their academic side of things? And I think that's where if you want to have an equity mindset, and also I'll also throw this out there, and let me, Erica, if I start getting off topic, let me just bring me back in, because sometimes I get a little preachy. um the thing about it is, if we're saying, look, I want to make sure that we can all agree that we want our students to be successful in our classrooms. We want them to pass our class. We don't want kids to fail. I don't think any teacher wants their kids to fail. Um, and so how will I know if I need to differentiate their instruction, for example, or how will I know if this child has an IEP, and what's specific in that IEP, what accommodations, modifications that are available for them that I can do so I can teach my students, and work with my students, so, again, so that they can be successful. So it starts with the relationship. I can't tell you how many times that I just, would just sit there and chop it up with kids and just let's what are y'all up to? What how was your weekend? How is your family doing? How's your brother? How's your sister doing? Starting there. And that's simple. But when we start to talk to our students and it's, we put some time allocated in our class and say, you know what? I know this is math class. And I know we're supposed to be going over the quadratic formula today. However, guess what? I just watched the show last night. Did anybody else catch it? Or I'm on Netflix. What are y'all on? What are y'all streaming on Netflix? Like those little moments, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or whatever. It's not gonna be the end of the world. Your kids are not gonna fail the standardized test because you spent 5 to 10 minutes on a topic that's not related to the content. But how creative and how much of an impact will that have when we talk to our kids and just humanize our students? When I used to be in the hallway sometimes, I remember I had a teacher walk up to me and she said, Sheldon, I'm literally watching you. And as all the kids are coming down the hallway, you're shaking hands, you're dapping them up, you got little jokes, you're doing different things. And it's not the same thing with each student. It's like you're doing different things. How did you do that? And what I told her, I said, you know what, man, look, I'm all about just having an individual relationship with students. It's some kids, yeah, we've created our own handshakes. Some students we do a high five. Some students, we got these inside jokes, or I got nicknames for them, or they got nicknames for me, and that is part of our relationship. You know what? Sometimes teacher will tell me, "Well, I don't look like my students, or I don't have the same background as my students, and how do I connect with them? Because I'm not into the things that they're into." I say, you know what? Half the stuff that the kids tell me about, and I'm not into it either. But I ask questions, and you know what? I'm one of those dudes. I will give it a try. My daughter has been watching anime, and I was like, you know what? I'm not a big fan of anime, but I said, look, which one are you watching right now? Let's check it out. And we sat down, we watched the show, and she told me what it's all about. And I was like, you know what, this actually isn't that bad. I've had students share with me rock and roll bands, and I'm like, do I look like someone who listens to rock heavy metal? I no, I don't. I don't listen to it. And you know what? He would laugh and he'd say, let me put you onto corn, or let me put you onto this group or that group. And then, man, to be honest, there's a lot of songs that I liked, but I never would have explored it. I never would have known that I liked some of these songs had I not given a try. I think sometimes we get closed-minded. We're so used to what we're comfortable with, and what we're, what our protocols are and what we normally do. And sometimes just stepping outside of that can be a little scary. And I get it, and I understand. But when I tell you that if you're telling me that you're here because you're watching this and you want to develop an equity mindset, then it starts there. Starts with the relationships. That's how you get to know your kids. That's how you get to know what their needs are, and that's how you get to understand what you can do to support them so that they can be successful in your class. If you don't start there, if you don't have any relationship, man, let me know, Erica, if I'm going too long. If I get a little long winded, let me know.
Well, so I want you to take it a step further because
Yeah,
I know that it starts with relationships.
yes,
But once we begin developing those relationships, you talk about being vulnerable with your students. So paint that for me. Like, as an educator, how can I be vulnerable?
it's two way. It's two way. Like, how can I ask my students, "Hey, how's grandma? How's grandpa? I heard she was sick, or they have stuff going on," and I'm sitting there asking students questions, but then my students don't know anything about me at all. Like they know absolutely, they just know you're Dr. Eakins. That's it. But they
Right.
don't know who in the heck is Dr. Eakins. They don't know anything about me beyond me being an educator. And I think it's two way. You know what? I've had days where I see an unarmed black man get killed by the police brutality, and I got to show up to school the next day, and I'm feeling down. Sometimes I'm dealing with some personal stuff at home, or I'm dealing with working with some colleagues, and I'm stressed out of some stuff or deadlines I got to meet. I'm human as well.
Hmm.
And sometimes when we forget that, it's a two-way street. How can I expect a student to be vulnerable just because they're a minor or something like that, and I'm an adult? How can I expect them to open up to me and share with me if I never do the same? I've had kids come up to me and say, "Hey, Dr. Akins, you don't look like looks like something's wrong." I say, hey, you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yeah, listen, I got this going on right now. I'm having a rough day. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not 100% today, and they want to know what's wrong, and we could talk it out, and we could have a conversation, and it's helpful. It's actually has been therapeutic for me to be able to talk to some of my students who can, like, again, I know all about them, and I think it's an opportunity for them to get to know me as well. My students know what music I like to listen to, what type of sports I'm into, what shows I like to watch. Those are things I think should be shared as well. But sometimes it's a lot of one-sided type of conversations, like, oh, I'm getting to know my students, but my students aren't getting a chance to know me either.
Absolutely. And I just thought of an example, and I didn't even equate it to, this whole conversation around equity, but Tita says, great advice. I agree. And I can even give an example just from my daughter who's in kindergarten. As she was entering kindergarten, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He, healed now, praise God. But she was feeling, I mean, she's 5, so she doesn't know how to deal with these feelings. And she's like, nobody else's dad, has cancer, all of this. And one day she came home and her teacher had told her, and I don't know how, the conversation came up, but had told her that her father had cancer too. And it was so powerful for my daughter to, realize, like, okay, I'm going through this, but my teacher's going through this. Like, she was so, just couldn't believe, and I didn't want to get all into, well, how did your teacher tell you that? But it was so powerful for my daughter who is struggling with those feelings. So this is like great advice. And it just from kindergarten, I'm sure, to 12th grade, college, like no matter the age, grade, like this advice can definitely resonate with students. So I absolutely love it. Love it. Thank you, Patricia. Yes, he is okay. But I thank you guys for that. For all of the love in the comments. But that is, I mean, it's just great advice. I am blown away. And so, as we think about the Teacher Goals podcast, right? We are here, Teacher Goals. And so, what are some teacher goals that teachers will be able to achieve by applying these principles that you've shared with us tonight?
I think, again, if we're leaning on relationships, and if we're saying what kind of goals can I have, so okay, why is that important? What can I expect if I develop some relationships with my students? I think the rapport makes such a difference in your classroom. The classroom culture is
Mhm.
going to make a difference. um, I can give you another example. When it comes to developing relationships, sometimes our students just kind of want to know that their teacher cares about them, and they want to
Mhm.
know that not only do they care about them, but they care about things that are important to them. For example, I've been in situations where I was coaching teachers who was like, I can't figure out what happened. I was in a conversation with my students, and we were talking about the N word, and I didn't say the N word or anything like that. But what I said was, black people, find the N word offensive. And I said, well, can I stop you right there? I said, how many black kids did you have in your class? He said, well, I had 4 black kids in my class. And I said, okay, here's the thing. If you point to your 4 black kids in your classroom and tell them that your people find this word offensive, then can you imagine what that message is received by them? That their teacher, who's not black, doesn't necessarily find this offensive either. Because if you're my teacher, I would want to know that the N word is a offensive word to you as well. How can you be in solidarity with your students as well? And how impactful can that be when you share, you know what? This is an offensive word. It's a word that I don't like to hear. It's not a word that should be said, and have that kind of conversation as opposed to putting it all on them and saying, well, y'all
Mhm.
find this offensive, but people say it, but you know what? It's offensive to you guys. Like, no, it should be offensive to you too. Like, you're an educator. To me, racial slurs should be like, that shouldn't even be a common conversation. But that teacher, it's not something that they personally have to deal with. It's not something that they've experienced. It's just in a different place. And so they were well intentioned, however they didn't
Mhm.
understand how that impacted them, when their relationships with that student. So I think when we're thinking about what kind of goals can we have, all right, well, one thing is, not only do you have your students are more likely to work harder and more likely to be engaged in conversations and engaged in your classroom lessons, because they don't want to let you down. Like, if I respect you, if I look at you and you know what, you're a teacher, and I find you as a person of influence, and I find a lot of respect for you, because again, we have a relationship. I believe that, you've shared with me, I've shared with you, and I want to do well in your class. I'm not gonna play around. I'm not gonna sleep in your class. I'm not gonna skip your class. So to me, if we think about it from that perspective, like, man, kids will probably be like, can't wait till tomorrow to show up to your class. Well, what are we going to do
Mhm.
today? Or, man, I can't wait to tell my teacher about what happened to me yesterday after school, or what happened to me this morning. And then they're in class with you, and then again they're engaged in class. It makes so much difference when you have kids that respect you, the kids that really believe that you believe in them,
Right.
and that they're important to you. And I think that's all that matters, and that's going to really help out with your teacher goals.
Absolutely. But with every good thing comes challenges. And so that takes us to the final question, developing this equity mindset, teaching with equity in mind. What challenges do teachers tend to have, and what can they do to overcome them?
It's tough right now. I mean, that's a loaded question these days.
Yes,
I've
that is
had
true.
teachers that were afraid to teach about Dr. King the other day, because how do I teach about Dr. King with critical race and all this pushback? So I think when it comes to challenges, I mean, I always say equity work is not supposed to be easy. There's gonna be challenges. People are gonna push back. People like things the way that they are. Someone once told me that the educational system was broken. I told them it's not broken. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It wasn't created for people like us. And if once we start to recognize that, when you start going against the grain, when you start speaking up and hey, calling things out, when you start, hey, I don't know if you recognize this, or we're in a staff meeting, but you know what? This discipline policy that we're coming up with, it's going to impact a lot of our students of color. Or if this dress code is going to impact our girls, and if you're the only person, sometimes you're going to just feel like you're the lone wolf. Sometimes, I
Mhm.
mean, I can't tell you how many emails I get, man. It's just me. It's just me. Everybody else thinks that there's no challenges, we're all good, and that's not our school, and all that kind of stuff, and it's just me who's trying to identify, and I don't have any support. So some of the challenges will be, you might be alone and speaking out. You may not have a co-conspirator. You may not have someone that's with you, that's going to stand with you, and you have to be okay with that. It's not always easy. Sometimes these things kind of catch us off guard. Sometimes we're just not prepared, and or we don't feel like we have the language or the terminology to respond to it. So I think that would be the biggest challenge, and that has been some of my challenges. Is okay, I need to keep myself educated. I need to learn about these things. So that way, if it does come up, I will be able to respond to it. And even if it's just me, even if I'm the only person that has noticed it, but at least I'm aware of it, and I'm willing to speak up and speak out. And that can be a challenge at first, but it's definitely something that may take some time or practice, repetition, if it will. But you'll get there.
And the good news is that if you do feel like you have this challenge, you have a wealth of resources that I know you're going to share with us. But there are tools that you can use that Dr. Eakins provides that will help you in these situations. So, kind of tell us about it. Tell us, if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you, and where can they get these tools and resources that you've developed to help them along this equity journey?
Yeah, I have what I think I have 227 episodes on the podcast now, and I mean we cover all kind of topics. If you're into math, if you're into STEM, if you're in on school leadership, if you're counseling, like we have covered. I have probably covered it at this point. And so it starts there. So you can go to leadingequitycenter.com. You can get the resources right there on the home page. I have a really nice. So what would happen is I would do a lot of trainings, and sometimes people will call me in and say, I'm a school principal. I'll be honest with you, I'm not as comfortable with having these conversations about equity. It's not necessarily something I'm as confident in. We want you to come in, so I come in and do the training. And sometimes what will happen is, let's say we're scheduled to maybe meet up once a month or once every other week or something like that, and I would show back up the second time or the third time, and it was almost like I was starting over, because absolutely nothing, no conversations or follow up or reviews or anything was happening in between me showing up and then the next time I showed up. So I created a resource called the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Activities Playbook. It has 20 different activities that you can do with your team, with your staff. And it helps you visualize and kind of helps you identify some challenges and helps you create some buy-in with your staff, with your team, so that again, you're not the lone wolf and they can kind of see things from themselves and work as a team. It's one thing to show up, so here's the plan. This is what we're gonna do. We'll start this next Monday. Versus, we worked as a group and we came up with some ideas. We came up with some areas for growth, and we're gonna work as a group because we all believe in this, as opposed to one person believing in that. So that's right there on the homepage. If you want just some other free resources, you can always listen to the podcast Leading Equity, and it should be accessible on any of your favorite podcast mediums platforms. It's all there.
Well, yes, and I have included that link in the comments. It will be in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for sharing that information about the playbook. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us here for tonight's episode. And you will be back. So if you all have enjoyed this conversation, then meet us at the Teacher Goals Conference, March 11th and 12th. Dr. Eakins is one of our keynote speakers. Super excited to have you. And thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate it so much. And I just truly enjoyed this conversation.
It's an honor. I'm looking forward to the conference, and I'm excited that you brought me on for tonight. So it's truly an honor. Thank you for thinking about me.
Thank you. All righty. So it is now Q&A time. Ask away any question that you have. We are going to go ahead and just dive right into them tonight. And so we have Tita that says, any advice on feeling or feelings with middle schoolers?
Not sure. Tita, maybe can you clarify that question? Any advice on feeling with middle schoolers?
Or maybe sharing or dealing with, she said
Oh,
dealing. So
dealing.
dealing with I'm like sharing your feelings with middle schoolers. All right, so dealing with feelings with middle schoolers. Got it.
I got you, got you. If you have a little bit more context if on that question, that'd be helpful. Because dealing with middle school, I it reminds me of the word tolerate. It's just like, we tolerate certain things, but I like the, maybe connecting with middle schoolers. Middle school is, I'm a secondary dude, so that middle school is my bread and butter. I love working with sixth, seventh, and eighth grade kids because I'm a short dude. I'm only 5'7", and most of the kids are about my height or less, and so just that alone was always great. But I love the banter and working with our middle schoolers. So I think for that age group, I mean, they like people being silly, and I just like to joke around. I am a jokester at heart, and so I don't have any problems making a fool out of myself or embarrassing myself. I just always ask folks to be authentic with their experience. No need to try to go outside of something that you wouldn't normally do on your own time. Kids can tell when you're putting on a show, when you're performing. So as long as it's authentic, and if you're a goofy person, I'm just a naturally goofy person with sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. That's just how I roll. But if that's not necessarily your thing, then maybe more one-on-one time, more small group interaction with your students might be better. But it just kind of depends.
And so she did add some context. It just came through. She said, today there was a confrontation in school and there were a lot of emotions. And I'm sort of wondering what's going on with middle schoolers' minds.
Okay. Well, it's I'm assuming that you're a teacher, Tita, and I'm not sure what happened, but if you do have a trusted, I used to have a couple students that I could kind of pull to the side and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And they would share. They know that way I can kind of figure out what's happened. So if you don't have students like that, where you can kind of just pull them to the side, "Hey, what's happening? Why is everybody sad?" Or it seems like there's a confrontation at the school. Do you know anything about it? If you do have, again, if you have that rapport with your students, I would start there first. If you don't have that, that's something that you might want to work towards. It's just having one or two kids that you could just pull out. Hey, what happened yesterday, or what's up with Johnny, or what's going on with our is Mary and David, are they still dating right now? Because they seem like they're upset at each other. Like those are the type of things I would do, to just try to have my ear to the street.
Love it. And so our next question comes from Chris, who says, I wasn't able to connect with a student last semester. I tried my best to show I care about him. Do you have any emergency tips on situations like this to connect and avoid feeling defeated?
I've been there. I've been there. So I showed up to school one day. First, like actually, it was like my first week of school, and I was at a brand new school, and I had one of my staff members come up to me and say, "Hey, you need to call this child's parents because they have been cutting up in class all day and they've just been unruly. You need to call their parents." And okay, first week of school. I want to support my staff. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. I didn't ask any questions. I just went on the phone, jumped on, called mom, and mom was upset. Mom said, "Let me talk to my son." So I went and grabbed him, and I saw this kid. I could hear her yelling at him over the phone, and I saw him slam the phone down. And that kid literally didn't talk to me for the entire school year until we're talking months. And like no matter what I tried, I would try to walk up to him, I try to give him a dap, or I try to say, "Hey, how you doing?" Man, he had a birthday, and we got him cake and candles and plates and all this stuff, like celebrate his birthday. The kid still wanted nothing to do with me. And it wasn't until we took the kids to on a field trip, and he finally just came up to me and just said, "Hey, let's go on this ride together." And we went on a ride, and after that, we were good, and we're still good. And like him and I are very close. He just had a child, and he's doing very well. But I say, don't give up. Sometimes it's easy for us. I've done all these things, and for some reason, I just can't seem to connect with the student. They hate me, and I just say, don't give up, because those little things, even if you keep giving it in, you keep doing little stuff, and they walk away and they ignore you and all those things. I think after a while you will wear them down. Now, has that worked for everybody? You know what? There is one student. I'll be honest. There's one student that in my educational career, I don't know. I tried, and I really kept trying. I never gave up. It's just for some reason I just could not connect with him. It was just one student. But other than that, even those situations where it just seems not at first, but you just gotta keep trying. Don't give up on it.
Love it. Don't give up. That is great advice. Amanda says, do you believe we will help students overcome from this I don't care mentality? I have so many students that have stopped caring about their education.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a glass full type of dude, so I do believe that, and I don't know if, I mean, that's common. I mean, my own kids talk about they hate school and they don't care and all that stuff. I think sometimes, and I don't know anything about you, Amanda, as far as your teaching style and what you even teach, but I think if we can help our students make sure that they understand the relevancy and they can relate to the content, I think that's very helpful. I've seen kids just sit there and they're like, well, I can't identify this. This is not something that would happen to me or anybody I know. Why do I need to learn this? And if we can kind of create the content in a way that the kids can see themselves in this content, and they can see examples, and they can actually, like, again, relate to the content. I think that is it can be very helpful, um because yeah, a lot of kids, I mean, I didn't like school. i'm not I'm not gonna pretend like I loved school either. Like, I thought I didn't care for a lot of my classes, because I can connect with some of the subjects, and it just, the stuff, I just felt like I was getting worksheets in some classes. This is all I'm getting, the worksheet. And what there's no nothing beyond that. And so it just, if I can't identify, if I can't see myself, and this is part of my educational experience, and this is, I'm supposed to go to school, but then it's not fun. And we got to make learning fun. We got to make it engaging, and that's, to me, that's bottom line. Otherwise, yeah, things won't change.
Love it. And so, Chris, you answered her question earlier, says thank you. Amanda says thank you. And I say thank you. Thank you for joining us. I thank all of you in the Teacher Goals community. We are so excited that you keep showing up week after week and rocking with us. We appreciate you. And we will be back next Thursday, same time, same place. I hope you join us. And once again, if you have not already done so, make sure you go grab the ticket for the conference. Absolutely free, March 11th and 12th. You can go to teachergoals.com/conference. And if you have not already grabbed your phone, go to your favorite podcast platform. Uh, Subscribe. That's the word I'm looking for. Subscribe to the Teacher Goals podcast. And while you're on there, go ahead and subscribe to the Leading Equity podcast so that you can catch all of us every single week and never miss an episode. And so we appreciate you all. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.